Squirrel. Speaking. Yeah, I've been struggling because I've been watching the news lately, and I have to say that I hate Nazis. Oh, okay. So, hate's a very strong word. I'm going to ask a question that's going to sound silly. Why do you hate Nazis? Oh, I know, because they're evil. Ooh, Nazis? Let's punch them in their Nazi faces. I hate Nazis because they're violent, they're bullies. They tend to select a group that's not as strong as they are, and then they target them, and they blame them for everything. And they're fanatics. They tend to think of the world as like very simple, black and white, and they're on the side of good and everybody else is evil. And with that type of mindset, they do all sorts of terrible things. They've done terrible things, throughout history in the many different ways that they've identified themselves over human history. So I'm hearing violence, I'm hearing bullying, I'm hearing fanaticism, and I'm hearing black and white thinking. I think the violence of the Nazis and their hateful language gets a lot of the headlines, but I think the real story is the black and white thinking. Let me explain. So there was this religion around the time of early Christianity called Manichaeism. And the basic idea was a battle between the lightness and the darkness. Or if you will, good versus evil. Now, this wasn't the first example of this type of black and white thinking, but it was a very extreme example of it. It was a whole religion based around it that lasted for several centuries. So this is just to say that this is a very old human idea of black and white, good versus evil, etc. I think it's very striking that this idea is still alive 2,000 years later. I mean, criminals versus good citizens, drug addicts versus clean, productive people, Nazis versus progressives. Yeah, like good guys and bad guys get punched in their bad guy faces. And I will admit, this is a very attractive worldview because it's so simple. It takes a chaotic, huge, scary world and it divides it into two sides or two teams. Good guys, bad guys. Choose your side. Act appropriately. Very simple. The problem is, there's just no way the universe, in all of its massiveness and complexity, is this simple. Let me give you an example. Think about all the different ways people have described you in your lifetime. Maybe you've been called good and bad. Maybe you've been called cowardly and courageous. I mean, think about who you are to all the people you've met in your life. Thousands and millions of people you've come across, and they all have a different story about you. You're probably somebody's nemesis right now. And you're also somebody's lover or favorite person in the world. And then other people probably have no opinion of you. All these things are existing at the exact same time. The Manichaean worldview basically says, no, you're just one thing. You're one thing. According to this little rule book, you're one thing. Which is absurd. Ooh, I'm getting anxious about the complexity of the universe. There's another problem with the Manichaean worldview. Oh, Carla, I didn't know you were here. Yes, I'm here on a symposium. You should have called. You could have stayed in my oak tree. I think we both know that would be inadvisable. Squirrel has alluded to the problem of these black and white stories that we tell about each other. But what about the stories that we tell about ourselves? In the same way that this worldview in the outer sense creates Nazism in culture, in the inner world it creates inner brutality and violence. That is to say, if you believe in a black and white world of good and evil, then with every action of yours, you must judge yourself by this measure. Imagine the internal world of the Nazi. When they do as they believe is correct, they are a hero. They lavish themselves with praise. But with every mistake, they are bad, they are evil, they are everything they hate. And they must struggle with this torment.
Oh, what are we gonna cry about Nazis now?
Rabbit, do you always interrupt in this manner?
All right, go on.
To those of us who do not subscribe to such a simplistic worldview, well, then we are left with complexity. And that is much more difficult because then you might have a so-called Nazi who is also a son, was once a baby, is maybe a soldier. They could have many layers. Maybe you're thinking, Carla, this is ridiculous. Are you saying, oh, this is a human being with some Nazi feelings? But unfortunately, yes, that is what I am saying. I know it's not comfortable. And if you like simplicity, watch out because it gets worse. Because everything that we see in humanity is itself human. So that is to say, there's a Nazi in all of us. There's a lover, a fighter, a peacemaker, a villain, a hero. We all have these aspects to ourselves. And so when you hate the Nazi, you hate your brother, your father, your mother, and you hate yourself. And my goodness, so much hate sounds like what Nazis do, yes? Very troubling. Okay, bye-bye, I leave now.
The raccoon lady confused me, and now I have a tummy ache.
I've missed you, Carla, just like old times.